What's up? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Roll Pod, an Alabama sports podcast from Bama 247. I'm your host, Cody Goodwin. We've got the entire gang here this morning. Alex Scarborough, Mike Rodak. Guys, my bracket's busted because Houston found a way to erase a 14-point deficit and take down Duke, which means Mike is probably going to win the Bama 247 pool. Mike, congratulations. How do you feel?
I'm still in second place, right? But I guess you're assuming that will flip if Florida wins. What if Houston wins?
Yeah,
I think I still win it if Houston wins, but I just have a lot more faith in Florida. And maybe that's misguided after what we saw Houston do to Duke.
Houston's good, man. Houston's been good for a long time. And that's what, even going into the tournament, I was like, why is nobody talking about this team that's a one seed?
That just offensively, they're not as exciting as Florida or Duke or even Auburn.
Unlike most of the time you get a team that's really defensive oriented and they're not athletic, they're both. So, like, it works.
And they're also sneaky good at shooting threes this year. I mean, they don't shoot a ton of them, but when they do shoot them, sorry, I apologize for the slowness of my internet, but Houston is number one in the country in three-point percentage, 39.9%. They make almost 40% of their threes. They don't shoot a ton of them, but they still shot 803 of them so far this year. So to shoot 40% as a team is really damn good.
No, they've got offense this year to pair with that mean defense that they maybe did not have last year. So who do you guys think is going to win tonight before we really get into the show?
I'm leaning Houston, man. I think they're just playing really good basketball. I think they've been undervalued for a long time. I think they're going to play that way.
I think Florida probably has the two best players on the court in Clayton and Condon. But, I mean, Roberts and
Duke
Cryer are still pretty good. Right, yeah, Duke had that too. You're right.
Another player.
I think Florida has the front court depth so they can be physical, even if they pick up some fouls, and they have four big guys they can kind of cycle through. So that helps Florida, and I think they have some shooting on the outside better than – well, not say better than Duke. I mean, Flagg and Knippel really can shoot it. But, I just feel like Florida between Aberdeen and Clayton, Richard, like they can get you. Proctor had a bad game. I mean, Tyrese Proctor did not shoot it well against Houston. That was part of Duke's problem. So, I don't know. We'll see. I will lean Florida, but I wouldn't be surprised if Houston won.
I like Florida. I think they just have a few too many options. They can match Houston's physicality, which I think is important. Not that Duke couldn't, but you could tell the last 10 minutes that Houston just continuing to press. Finally, I think caught up with them and Duke. They look like, at least, especially the last 5 minutes, but really probably the last 10 minutes of the second half, they look like they just ran out of gas. I'm not sure that that's going to happen to Florida. If it does, I would be pleasantly surprised. But I like the Gators. I think they can just do a few too many things. And also, Walter Clayton Jr. is playing out of his freaking mind. I did enjoy, we had cited this stat when Alabama played Duke in the Elite Eight, that this year's Duke team, historically good, at least by KenPom standards, the second highest rated KenPom team ever. The only one that was ahead of them was the 98-99 Duke team. Neither of those teams won national championships. So kind of crazy. We'll talk more about hoops in the latter part of today's show. We're going to discuss Alabama, some transfer portal comings and goings, some roster management stuff. They have lost a couple of guys to the portal. They have gained a few more guys from the portal, and they also have some public declarations about guys who are returning for the 2025-26 season. We'll touch on that later in the show, kind of what it all means, what it all looks like at this juncture in the offseason. But first, I wanted to start today's show looking back at last Friday's spring football scrimmage. Alabama's 11th spring practice was a scrimmage at Bryant-Denny Stadium. We did not get to see it. We got to talk to Kalen DeBoer afterwards for about 12 minutes. And so I figured we could discuss kind of what he said, what he saw, what he told us. And we do this every time, but I do want to start with the quarterbacks, because Kalen was asked a couple of different questions about the quarterbacks, specifically just about how they played, the rep distribution, who ran with the ones, who ran with the twos. And he answered those questions kind of, but then he proceeded to go on a nice little fun tangent about Keelan Russell, the true freshman 5-star, right? The crown jewel of Alabama's most recent recruiting class, signing class, about how he continues to impress and how he's continuing to grow. And he may not get as many reps with the first and second team as Ty Simpson and Austin Mack, but you can tell that there is some genuine excitement about Keelan Russell, obviously, right? But it's just kind of fun to see DeBoer, I don't want to say light up when he talks about him, but it's just, you can tell that this dude is excited about him. And Alex, I guess I'll start here with you. Was that maybe your takeaway, listening back to the press conference, reading the transcript, just seeing DeBoer's words about the quarterbacks and specifically Keelan? Like this, you can tell that this guy's getting excited about this guy, and we're only 11 practices in.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most notable thing, and with good reason. He's excited about him with good reason. I mean, again, the highest rated signee in Alabama history for 247 Sports. He's their guy. I mean, he's who they went all in on the quarterback position. He's going to be probably the most talented guy they've ever signed, and anywhere they've ever been. And nothing he's done to this point has refuted that fact. You want to see how he holds up physically. You want to see how he holds up to the competition. I wonder how much of his third team reps are roster management more than anything, and seniority more than anything. But man, I mean, you want to hear good things about a quarterback of that caliber, and you've heard about him from day one until now. Now, you got to finish this spring strong, and you've got a long way to go before anything's decided. But it's good to know at the very, very, very least, you've got a really good option for the future. Now, the question is, how soon does that future come?
Specifically, DeBoer said, I don't want to say it was even across the board, but they all kind of got their shot with the ones and twos. Keelan's doing a great job, but with Ty and Austin, just because they're older, Keelan definitely working with the twos. He'll get 1 reps from time to time, but that's no indication of really where we feel he's at. He's killing it, doing a great job. You can see when he's out there, he's getting more and more comfortable moving the ball down the field. When there's a throw to be made, he'll make the throw. That's for sure. So just the learning curve that comes with being a young guy compared to the other two guys, there's a little bit more as far as understanding the offense and trying to continue to install things. They have grasp of the basics from day one and can just do a few more things. They're all three making throws, making some big time throws. Thought they all moved the chains at times when they maybe had their backs against the wall, maybe in some second and third and long situations where they found a way to make a big throw. Obviously, somebody has to catch it too. That was more or less what he said when asked about the quarterbacks and specifically the rep distribution. Mike, what did you make of DeBoer's comments? It seems like this is a situation where Ty Simpson clearly has the lead. They are giving Austin Mack some reps with the ones and twos, but you can tell it's kind of hard to hide his excitement talking about DeBoer here when it comes to talking about Keelan Russell.
Look, goes back to what I said several shows ago. Keelan Russell is their guy, as Alex said. Like, he's the shiny toy. He's the all-time highest ranked recruit. He's Ryan Williams last year on steroids because he's not literally, but figuratively on steroids because look, I know they need to bulk him up. That's not probably the way to do it, but because he's a quarterback, he's probably he's higher ranked than Ryan Williams as a recruit, and he's also a higher stature, higher profile because he's a quarterback. So if they were comfortable playing Ryan Williams early last year because he was checking all the boxes that they wanted, I don't understand why they wouldn't be comfortable playing Keelan Russell right away this year because he checks all the boxes, if he checks all the boxes, assuming he does. And, we're obviously getting towards the end of the spring, but there's all the summer workouts, and then you have an entire fall camp, and there's a lot of runway left for Keelan Russell to get to the point where they feel comfortable starting him. And I don't feel like that has anything to do with Ty Simpson. Ty Simpson could continue to kill it and do everything that they want him to do and do everything that Ty is capable of doing. I don't think that's necessarily tied to, pardon the pun, that
it's like a pun within a pun. That's interesting.
You're talking about Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback.
Right. I don't think that Keelan Russell's development is tied to Ty Simpson. Like, Ty Simpson could continue to do what he does and have a great fall camp too. But it's all about what Keelan does to me that would decide who's your starting quarterback, because you're not redshirting Keelan Russell this year. If he's your number 2, there's a chance he's getting into several games, probably more than 4. So are you willing to just waste a year of eligibility on the best prospect to ever walk into Alabama, according to our recruiting rankings and at least the history of the rankings, to start Ty Simpson? Again, that's no commentary on Ty. It's just the reality of bringing in someone like Keelan Russell. And that has been something that I've said all along. So that's the question. And I think obviously the implication as we talk about Ty and Keelan is that Austin Mack, in whatever hopes there might have been that him and Ryan Grubb had some sort of connection or whatever, and that would translate into him becoming the guy, just doesn't really seem to have materialized to this point. Again, is there still time for that to happen? Yes, but again, it's still independent. No matter what Austin Mack does, Keelan Russell could do everything that Alabama wants him to do, and that would surpass and usurp and whatever other word you want to use, whatever Austin Mack does. So Austin has a decision to make, and that's, sorry to bring it back to the portal again, but that's coming up very quickly here. The middle of next week, I believe that opens, right? April 16th, so a week from Wednesday. Austin has a decision to make within the next week here, week to 10 days, whether he's going to stay. And I think that's an interesting one on his part, because potentially you're looking at being the number 3 quarterback for your third year of eligibility. And he's already redshirted, so he can't use a redshirt this year.
Before I circle back on the Austin Mack point, because I do think it's interesting what Alex said, that maybe rep distribution plays into roster management a little bit here. We are under the presumption that Keelan Russell is the future of the Alabama program. Whether that future arrives this season or next season, I think is really the only thing that remains to be seen. So if we assume that like Keelan's on this upward trajectory and he will pass Ty Simpson at some point, do we think 15 spring practices and however many fall camp practices, do we think that that is enough time for Keelan to catch Ty? Because the takeaway that I had from DeBoer talking last Friday was that Ty and Mac are getting way more run with the 1s and 2s than Keelan, specifically because of their age and experience. They understand the system. They're able to have a higher starting point than Keelan. Do we think Keelan can catch them in time to be the starter in whatever capacity at some point this season?
What's in time? Are we talking about week 1?
Right.
Are we talking about fall camp?
There's no game this weekend. I mean, literally, there's no A-Day game, but there's also no game. So it's not whether 15 practices is enough. It's whether August 30th by then.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Do we think the time he's putting in the spring and then the time he's putting in fall camp, like, is he going to be able to catch Ty in time to be the starter week 1? Is he going to catch Ty in time to be the starter by week 4? Like, it's
possibly, but I don't. Right. I still think the likeliest scenario is that Ty Simpson is your starter week 1. And it is Ty Simpson's job to lose. And if he stumbles once, he might get Wally pipped and we never hear from him again. But isn't that ancient history? This feels so much like Mac Jones and Bryce Young in his backup. Like, you don't know what you're getting necessarily from Max/Ty because he's been around for a long time and not really played. And when you've seen him, it's been kind of And then he gets on the field and it's like, well, shit, Mac's really damn good. Now, the supporting cast was really, really damn good.
Right.
But I don't think there's definitely not enough time for Keelan to catch Ty in the spring. Some of that was by design, I think, but also some of that's just, again, dude's been on campus for like 15 minutes. Like, you got to give him a minute to learn the offense, to figure out who this new coordinator is who never recruited him, had nothing to do with him. Hello, my name is Ryan Grubb. I'm your boss now. Like, you need to give that a little bit of time. And Ty has not played his way out of the starting job. If you're saying, does he have enough time by week 1 to beat him out? Theoretically, but I think the odds are not in his favor to do that. If you're saying he has time to beat out him out before we're all throwing on jackets because it's cold, yes. Now, whether that's week 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is, yeah, he could do it by then. But I think Ty has to lose it more than anything else at this point.
For the record, I wore a jacket this morning, so maybe it's time now. Look, not to compare everything to Ryan Williams because it's a quarterback versus a wide receiver. I think there's obviously a lot more to learn as a quarterback than being a wide receiver, just naturally. That's kind of how those positions are. But Ryan Williams came in last summer. Kobe Prentice, Kendrick Law. I mean, Jeremy Bernard had experience in that system. Whoever else was even there, I forget. Whatever. Ryan Williams shows up. They see what he can do. We're like, hey, we're putting this guy in the field. Absolutely. I think there's time for Keelan Russell to become the starter by week 1. And I don't think that is a commentary on Ty Simpson. I don't think that is directly resulting from any sort of Ty Simpson performance. I think you have to look at Keelan Russell independently as you went out and got this guy to be your quarterback. When is he going to be ready? Doesn't matter if Ty is ready, if you think Ty is great, whatever the deal is. I think you have to make that decision independently and simply look at Keelan Russell and do we want to play this guy or not? And the Bryce Young comparison I think is valid. I will say I think college football has changed in the last 5 years. When Bryce Young was a freshman in 2020, there was no transfer portal the way it is now. There was no NIL. In fact, he was one of the early guys that following summer of 2021, everybody was talking about NIL when was it Saban went to the Texas coaches convention and
figured salary.
and that blew people's minds. 7 figures. I remember asking Lane
Kiffin $980-something thousand, but whatever.
Right. No, it was. I remember you reported it for ESPN, and I remember asking Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach and all those guys at media days about that, and it was this big thing that Bryce Young was making $1 million in his second year when everybody knew he was going to start. But college football is different these days, and I think the idea of sitting a guy as a freshman, if he's ready to play, independent of whatever else you have on the roster at that position, is harder to do these days because then you're really putting yourself behind the 8 ball for year 2 on trying to get that guy on the field, trying to keep him in-house because he wants to get on the field, and probably paying him more just to keep around for a second year. So I think that's harder to accomplish, what you did with Bryce Young 5 years ago, to do it now with Keelan Russell.
I made this point in the last podcast, but I think it's worth making again. Right now, it feels like they have put the training wheels on Keelan by having him in the third team, spoon feed him the offense. Everything is going to change in the fall. The defense they're playing is not Alabama's defense. The offensive line they have is not Alabama's offensive line. It's going to be very different for those quarterbacks when fall camp starts, and you've got Keon Sabb back there, Damani Jackson, James Smith. You've got all these guys that are going to be back in there, and they're not going to care who the quarterback was. They're going to go get them. It's going to be very different for those guys. So the competition is going to ramp up in a major way, and we're going to see, okay, how far along is each one of these guys? In a lot of ways, spring feels like an extended, more competitive walkthrough. Who can complete the passes? Who can orchestrate the offense? The real competition, to me, begins in the fall.
That leads me back to the Austin Mack part of this conversation. Alex, you had made the comment that perhaps rep distribution, which is to say keeping Mack at that kind of QB2 role, or at least including him in this competition. And he may very well be in the thick of this competition. Like, we aren't 100% sure. We get to talk to Ryan Grubb next week, and maybe he will shed a little bit more light on it, since DeBoer doesn't dive into too many details about that. Maybe I'll phrase it this way. What are the odds that they are able to keep Austin Mack, they being Alabama, for the 2025 season?
Better than 50%, because I think pragmatically, even if he wants to leave, I still don't see an ideal scenario in which you leave, because you're just going to end up sitting wherever you are, or you're going to end up on a bad football team. You really want to do that? And we've never seen any of these guys start. So if I'm Austin Mack, I'm going, I want to see that dude actually start and play well before I think I'm out of it. Am I being optimistic in today's game and thinking about the way quarterbacks view themselves? Yes. I said on this last podcast that everybody sees himself as a starter. Everybody sees himself playing in the NFL. So he could make a knee-jerk decision. I just think pragmatically they're going to look at it and say, you test the portal, what do you really expect to happen for you? I don't think he's going to end up in a better, more competitive situation than at Alabama.
I think that's fair. Mike, you like playing devil's advocate?
Never. I mean, what's wrong with Austin Mack starting at Stanford? They have a coach yet? They have Frank Reich.
Heck yeah.
Like, so if you're Stanford and your depth chart currently consists of Elijah Brown.
I love that you looked this up.
Who played at Mater Dei and last season completed 58% of his passes for 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. And Bear Backmeyer is your backup, another California kid. And Miles Jackson, another California kid. Like, do you get you're probably on a bad team in Stanford this year, but just throwing
you don't know who your coach is going to be. You only know
you don't even know who your coach is going to be, but you have a chance to get on the field. And then by December, if it doesn't work out, there's no penalty to going back in the portal and going somewhere else. Or you stay at Alabama and you have a lot of respect for Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer, but you're a scout team quarterback the whole year. That's kind of the decision he would have to make. Or he sees himself as the number 2 at Alabama, and he still sees Keelan Russell as the number 3, and he feels like that's where he's going to stay by week 1. And if Ty Simpson doesn't work out or he gets hurt or whatever the case may be, you feel like you're the next guy up, which I would call optimistic if that's the way that Austin Mack looks at it. But I think there's probably places for him to go. I mean, Stanford would be one, but there's, I'm sure, other schools out there, especially West Coast, because that's where he's from. I think that you could find a place to play this year.
Well, now I'm looking at Stanford's schedule, and I need Austin Mack against Bill Belichick's North Carolina defense on November 8th in Chapel Hill. I need to see that because that sounds so entertaining. I don't know if Belichick will have that UNC defense playing at the same level of those Patriots defenses, but if they are even a shadow of what he was able to do in New England, I got to see that. That's the quarterback conversation. We're going to continue to have the quarterback conversation because there are just so many different layers to this quarterback conversation. Alex has one more point to add before we move forward.
Okay, well, if we're going to flush everything Kalen DeBoer said on Friday, Ryan Williams not practicing, that's not nothing, right?
I was getting to that. That was the next thing on my list, that not just Ryan Williams, but 2 pretty key pass catchers, I would argue. Ryan Williams and
there
Josh
are no
Cuevas.
tight ends.
There are 0. Put some respect on Peter Knudson's name, okay?
Well, what about Jay Lindsey? Actually, I guess would be the one scholarship guy they have left.
They're going to run 10 personnel all year.
So yeah. Anyway, two key pass catchers: Ryan Williams, Josh Cuevas, held out of the scrimmage last Friday. It does not sound like either of them are going to continue to do much of anything at all this spring. Alex, you're the one that brought it up. Where's the level of worry here? Whether it's one, both, tight end room, what do we think?
On a 1 to, if it's just Williams on a 1 to 10, it's like below 5. It's not that huge of a worry unless this is a recurring kind of injury type thing. And we've been given no indication that's the case. And again, if we want to talk about roster management, in some ways, I think not having them out there and getting those guys, what we would think is 4, 5, 6 on the depth chart, more snaps is probably a good thing in terms of keeping them around, because we have talked about the idea of a receiver hitting the portal. So, but it's not nothing. It is maybe pound for pound your best football player on the team. I emphasize pound for pound on that. Do you have who else, Cody?
Jeremy, 100%.
Yeah, maybe. It's close. I mean, Jeremy's probably got 15 pounds on Ryan Williams, probably. And we're getting into math at this point. But anyway, he's your one star player, if we want to talk about a conversation that took place once. He is their headliner. So it's not nothing. You just have to hope this is just a precautionary type thing. Now, if you put him and Cuevas together, I'm a little bit more concerned because the Cuevas / Marshall Pritchett injury, it exacerbates a problem that existed before spring practice ever began, which is a lack of returning depth and a lack of depth period at the tight end position and what that means for moving forward. And that's why I said a week ago, I think they're going hunting in the portal. And I don't know if they stop at 1 with tight end because you need more options there, whether you're talking about a guy who can, A, catch the football, because we don't know how many guys can do that outside of Josh Cuevas, and B, a guy who can block, because I think that's probably even more important for what they might need to do offensively. You're going to run 12 personnel like they did last year, like they've done in the past. You need good options there, and they just do not have them. So the Cuevas thing is more worrisome than Ryan, but when it's your best player out, it's not nothing.
None of this is really a big story right now because it's April or it's been March. It's going to be May.
Does that mean you're in sync over Backstreet? Are we getting that declaration here?
I don't know. I feel like that was pretty
That's
smooth.
a good future pod. I don't know.
When we're trying to get through the summer months. Hey, what are your favorite rock bands and boy bands of the 90s?
Can't wait for our drive down to Tallahassee. We should just play a bunch of NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and 98 Degrees. What I was going to say is if you have all this stuff going on in August, injury-wise, your panic level is rising from where it is now. And granted, a lot of these were off-season surgeries like Lawson or, season-ending injury. Sabb was a big injury. But if you're down guys like Sabb and Lawson and James Smith and Caden Proctor and Ryan Williams and Josh Cuevas and Danny Lewis and
Justin Jefferson,
Justin Jefferson and whoever else, Damani Jackson. If you're down guys like that in August and you're getting ready to play a game against Florida State or Wisconsin, that's an issue. Or if you're in October and you have a bunch of injuries, which last year I feel like for the most part they avoided the big major injuries until later on, and they had Q Robinson go down. I guess Sab went down in October. Lawson went down in the Oklahoma game, but like they didn't really have a big season-ending injury until the middle of October. They had some nicks and bruises and things.
Jalen
like that.
Hale was the only
Right. That was in the spring.
Yeah.
It's not an issue right now, but if this replicates itself later down the road, that would be an issue. Now, specific to Ryan Williams, I think Kalen DeBoer had the quote that he said, "We know what he can do," which is true. And I think it obviously makes a lot of sense to play it safe this time of year and not cause further injury, not whatever the case may be, not make it worse. But let's not consider Ryan Williams to be a finished product. He's only 18. I think there's a lot of room for him to get better and more consistent, as talented as he is. I don't think you can just not practice him and just expect him to be a game day player and just throw him out there and be the guy that we all think he can be. Like, there's things that he can do better. There's things he needs to practice. Like,
and if I can interject for a second, the chemistry with the quarterbacks is a big thing.
Right.
You're starting quarterback, and you got to build that, and that takes time.
Just because he has these superhuman abilities that we all saw in the Georgia game doesn't mean that's going to show up in every game. And I think we learned that last season. Even the Michigan game, when Will Johnson was down for Michigan, wasn't playing, one of the best corners in the country, I don't know they really took advantage of that. And I don't know if that was entirely Jalen Milroe or entirely Nick Sheridan or entirely anybody want to throw under the bus. There's still the receivers have a job to do each and every play. And I don't know if the overall production was entirely there, if it met the ceiling for Ryan Williams last year. So I don't know if you can consider him a finished product. I'm sure that's something that Jamarcus Shepard would probably say as well. You still need him on the practice field. Like, you still need to get him better. That's true for any player. And I don't think there's any exception, any superhuman ability, any whatever you want to call it with him. I think he still needs to play by the same rules as everybody else. That's not to say that what Alabama's doing right now is wrong and kind of holding him out, as Kalen said. I think it makes sense in this current moment. But if he's ready to get back on the field, he still needs the practice time.
The tight ends situation, a little nervous because you've got Cuevas, who is now hurt. Danny Lewis has not been there this spring. Caleb Edwards is not even on campus yet. Marshall Pritchett, injury, he's done for the spring. So now you are literally Peter Knudsen and Jay Lindsey. Seeing what they have there, it wouldn't shock me at all, Alex, if what you're saying, they're going to go shopping in the portal, maybe specifically for a guy who can catch passes. I'm of the belief that Cuevas can do it all. I'm of the belief that Pritchett is a guy who will be willing to do it all. I think he's a little bit more of a pass catcher than a blocker, but that will come with time. Same thing with Caleb Edwards, who is actually a higher rated tight end prospect coming in. He will be here in the summer. So how quickly can he maybe catch up and perhaps be an impact guy that they're looking for? But I also think it makes sense to bring in, just, if nothing else, another veteran tight end who may not be able to do everything at the highest level, but will be kind of that veteran presence along with Cuevas to maybe help Pritchett, Edwards, Lindsey, even Knudsen a little bit to come along.
Well, and remember, correct me if I'm wrong, this Cuevas' last year of eligibility.
Believe so.
So if you can get a guy with one more year left, you can kind of have a veteran guy in the locker room still, because it's going to lean very heavily young next year with all those guys, true freshmen coming in.
We did get a positive update on the injury front. Keon Stab hasn't participated at all this spring, but it seemed like things are trending in the right direction. Here's what Kalen DeBoer said. First off, Keon just continuing to get feedback and reports. It's been super positive. Even today, another positive report, probably as positive as we've had. He's on track. He's on pace. It was quite an injury that he was coming back from, but seems like Keon Sab's going to be in a better place this summer, should be full go by fall camp, dealing with the foot injury. Him not being there, along with Damani Jackson, has allowed some younger guys to step into the secondary this spring, specifically Dijon Lee, along with Cam Calhoun, the Utah transfer. They've gotten some run at corner without Damani Jackson there. It sounds like they've been very impressive. Another name that has been impressive, or at least a name that maybe we've heard a little bit about, whether it's from Mo Linguist doing his Yay Alabama interview or just listening to DeBoer and some of these other players talk, Zay Mincy seems to have really taken a hold of the new safety role. He was one of those 5-star defensive backs last year, was more or less in the cornerback room for, 2/3 of the season. And then he transitioned more to safety, which we all kind of thought, given his frame. It seems like that transition, I don't want to say is seamless, but he's been fairly impressive this spring, just listening to what people are saying about the secondary, about the depth that they have there. I know that we've talked at length about the depth in the secondary and how that could arguably be Alabama's best pound for pound position room. Shout out Mo Linguist, that he's been doing a really great job just remaking that room. What do we make of the fact that Keon Sabb is on his way back healthy, but also some of these younger guys are getting a lot of run, and really it seems like they're taking advantage of it?
I feel like we're in a scene of The Beautiful Mind where we're just going to be trying to put all these flying pieces together. Like, the secondary's loaded with good players. I don't know where all of them fit. I have no idea. And like everyone, like, it's very fun to say, "Oh, this guy could be a Husky," or "This guy could be a Husky," or "This guy could be a Husky."
Everybody can be a Husky in my mind.
Max two guys are going to get run at that position, and there'll probably be an injury. But I mean, it's a very good problem for Alabama to have, especially given where they were a year ago. I just have no idea where some of these guys who are not penciled in starters fit, because you're not moving Damani off starting. You're not moving Zabian off starting. You're not moving Keon Sabb off starting. Bray Hubbard probably isn't being usurped as the starter week 1, maybe. I don't know. But like, there are only so many spots for these guys, and they could get really creative, but I don't know where they all fit. I'll be the first to admit, like, build your own secondary, guys. It's a fun game to play all off season, and we're going to be playing it too.
Well, Mike, I wanted to bring you into this because this is going to touch on your favorite subject, the transfer portal. Is Alabama secondary maybe a position group that we need to keep an eye on when the portal opens later this month?
Well, I was going to say, if this was me covering the NFL again, I'd say a couple of these guys are trade candidates. You trade a guy in August for a mid-round draft pick and get rid of them, and
you trade Zay Mincy for a tight end.
Right. I mean, hey, maybe one day in college football, that's what this will look like. I want to completely rule it out.
Dave Mincy and the future rights to Zion Gibson for an offensive tackle.
Sorry, Professor, I can't take my midterm today. I just got traded to South Dakota State. Like, that's.
I mean, if you're under contract with these teams, like, maybe there's a day when that happens. I don't know. Yes, I do think it's a position to watch for the portal. I don't know if it's any of the guys we mentioned. I think the number one name I would personally be looking for is Red Morgan, from where he was a year ago in the spring when everybody's talking. Remember bowl practices and spring practice last year, and they were very thin last spring in the secondary. Like, Red Morgan was this freshman who was really bursting onto the scene, and he got some opportunities last year and just kind of faded. And then you bring in guys over him, which, naturally you were going to do as part of your freshman class. I think Ivan Taylor is one of them. And Red Morgan's been working at corner this spring too, which is a little bit different. But you still brought in Cam Calhoun. You brought in Dijon Lee at corner as a freshman. You have Chuck McDonald coming this summer. I just don't know where Red Morgan's going to play. And he used a year of eligibility last year. He was not a redshirt guy because he played too much. And I mean, maybe you can convince him to stay this year in redshirt. Just doesn't feel like a very common situation for that to happen. So he would be the number one name on my list in the secondary that I could see going into the portal. Would it be a surprise? I mean, Cam Howard, like a guy like that who, you bring in Ivan Taylor, you have Zay Mincy, you have Bray Hubbard, you have Keon Sabb ahead of him at safety. You can make an argument for a guy like that. I would be surprised if, like, Drake Kirkpatrick left just because of the legacy, and I think he has an opportunity maybe to work in at Husky.
Podcast host now.
What?
He's a podcast host now.
He's a podcast host. I would be surprised at a guy like that, and I would be surprised if any of the guys who have a chance to start would leave through the portal in the spring. So I don't know if there's a great mystery to me on who plays. I think if Keon Sabb is healthy, and he still needs to get back. I mean, he was on crutches when I was there for the pro day a couple weeks ago. He was still on crutches. So how much practice time he's going to have between now and August 30th, I don't know. But when he's on the field, he's one of the best safeties in the country, and a guy who could very well be at least a day 2 draft pick next year. So, and then Hubbard, and then Mincy, and then Ivan Taylor, and then Cam Howard at safety. Like, I feel like that pecking order to me is pretty obvious. I feel like at corner, if once Damani Jackson gets back, him and Xavier Brown, there's no reason to take them off the field or not have them start. Can you work in a third corner like they've done in the past with whoever it was last year? There was a couple different guys, or Trey Amos a couple years ago in Saban's defense. Yes. How big of a role will that be? I don't know. And I think that would be either Cam Calhoun or Dijon Lee, but probably not both. And then Deshaun Jones seems like a guy that they trust, veteran guy at Husky. So I don't know if there's a great mystery to it. I think it's nice to have guys like Lee and Calhoun who you're impressed by this time of year. I don't know what it's going to mean in the fourth quarter of the Tennessee game, if they're going to be on the field because of that, or the fourth quarter of the whatever game, the Georgia game. Sometimes things that happen in April just don't really translate to those situations. So, and then we'll just have to see what happens after the season, because it might be tough to keep all those guys. You are losing Damani Jackson. This is last year. You are losing Deshaun Jones. You're probably going to lose Keon Sabb. Theoretically, Bray Hubbard can go into the draft if he wanted to. Are you going to keep everybody, though, for next year? We'll see. But it's nice to have all these pieces. I agree with Alex. I don't know where they're all going to play. And when people don't play, people tend to leave eventually. So there's a downside sometimes to having that many good pieces. And that's just a symptom or a whatever you want to call it of college football these days.
As strong as the position group is, I am curious to see if any of those guys might find other opportunities elsewhere when the portal opens up. I don't know. It literally came to mind just over the weekend after listening to some people around the program and listening to DeBoer after the scrimmage. I wonder. But Red Morgan is a good name to watch, just given he played a little bit last year. Doesn't seem like he's anywhere near the top of the depth chart now at whatever position. So, and it could, I don't know. There's, if we really want to get down the rabbit hole here, maybe part of Red Morgan's issues last year was just he was very hot and very cold. Sometimes he would play really fast and make a play. Other times he would play a little too fast and get beat. So maybe a year in the cornerback room with Mo allows him to work on those coverage skills. And maybe this is like a redshirt / development year. I don't know. I don't know what they're telling him. That's totally off the wall. He could also just leave and go play somewhere else. And I don't know that I would necessarily blame him given all the talent that's in that room now.
Yeah, you got to understand, it's every coach, GM, whatever, they've got this big board and they know who is staying, who they project to stay next year and who they project to go. So most of these conversations about the transfer portal are not like you're going to start this year. It's like, look over there. This guy's going pro. This guy's out of eligibility. It's looking at the next year and being able to sell. Okay, it may not work out for you this year where you're the starting quarterback. Look, Damani's leaving. Keon's leaving. So-and-so we expect to go somewhere. There's other steps to this beyond who starts week 1 against Florida State.
A lot of things to keep track of if you're a college football assistant coach trying to deal with roster management and all that jazz. Those were mostly all of the big takeaways that I took from DeBoer talking to us about the scrimmage. Again, we'll get to Alabama's into their last week of spring practices this week. They'll practice 4 more times. We'll get to see them on practice Tuesday morning. We'll also get to watch the A-Day practice on Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So maybe that will reveal something else. Maybe not. I guess we'll find out. Then we'll get to talk to Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb, and Kane Womack next week to kind of tie a bow on spring football. Last thing I wanted to get to on today's show was some basketball talk. The basketball portal is hopping. Alabama's 2025-26 roster is kind of slowly coming into view. They have had 2 guys leave or enter the transfer portal. I shouldn't say leave yet because I don't know that they've announced fully where they're going. Nas Cunningham, who redshirted this past year, he was a true freshman, top 50 prospect. He is in the portal. Mo Diabate, Mr. Blue Collar himself, also announced that he is entering the transfer portal. Alabama has reeled in 3 guys from the transfer portal. They have pulled in Bucknell center Noah Williamson, Florida State forward Taylor Bull-Bowen, and Miami guard Jaleel Bethia. So those 3 guys are now on the roster. And then they had 4 guys Alabama did announce that they are going to return for the 25-26 season. That was Aiden Holloway, Houston Millette, Latrell Wrightsell, and Aiden Sherrill. We can kind of see what most of this roster is going to look like. There's still some decisions out there that need to be made, specifically LeBaron Philon. I think the expectation is that he's going to test the NBA draft waters. There's also Darion Reed, who's got 3 years remaining. He was a 5-star blue chip guy who was hurt on and off this past season. He's probably the most sought after guy on Alabama's roster. We'll see what ultimately he decides to do. And then there's also forward Jaron Stevenson, who tested the NBA waters last year, did not have a great season this year. We'll see what is going to happen with him. Alabama also bringing in 3 signees. Mike, I'll let you start this one. Looking at the transfer portal comings and goings and announcements when it comes to Alabama basketball's roster, what do you make of the roster at this way too early juncture in the offseason?
Well, you said the transfer portal is hopping, so all I could think of is the rabbit turtle rodeo, but that's neither here nor there. Or hair.
You're such a dad. Such a dad.
Did you like the hair?
The tide was so much better.
It's neither here nor hair.
I'm going to mute you if you don't answer this question.
I'm sorry. Just turn off my camera, my microphone, and leave me be in my world of puns. What do I think of their roster? I think that they've obviously, you knew they were going to lose a decent amount. You knew you're going to lose Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, Amore, and Youngblood. So that's kind of your baseline. I always had a sense that Mo D had a chance to leave. I know it wasn't always expected or agreed upon that he was just going to go into the portal, but I felt like that was kind of the hints that were there. The signs were there with him. So, that's a good player. I don't know if there was going to be a good fit for him to return and start. I think he's very, very good in the role that he's played for Alabama the last 2 years, especially this past year. But I don't know if putting him into a bigger role, if that's a great fit for the system. So, because he's a little bit small for the 4 and he's not a prolific enough shooter for the 3. So I think you bring in what you kind of needed in the backcourt, a longer guard with a lot of upside as a shooter in Bethea. Did not have a great season as a freshman last year for Miami. They were kind of a mess this year, though, with Larinaga retiring, announcing that in the middle of the season. They have a coaching search. I think you pick up him and look at him the way you looked at Aiden Holloway and say the potential is there for him to be one of the best shooters in the country. Even though it didn't show up for Holloway as a freshman at Auburn, I think it showed up in a bigger way in his second year. I think you're trying to replicate that with Bethea, but you add a little bit of length, which you need in the backcourt as well, because he is 6'5". So, I think the backcourt is set. The tricky part is, as it always is with the draft, is you don't know for a while. And I think that's probably going to be a situation with Philon because he goes more than likely he's going to go into the draft pool. I think it would be surprising if he stayed out of the draft pool at this point. And then you go through the combine process, the committee evaluation process, and then you have until May 28th. And that's still a decent ways away. And it's hard to sell guys on coming in the backcourt if they know Philon might come back. And then where do they play? So that's going to be a tricky situation to navigate unless he really gives you a sign that hey, I'm not going to come back. Hey, I'll come back. And if I stay out of the draft, I'm going to go into the portal. That's kind of what Quinterly didn't go into the draft, but Quinterly went into the portal late a couple of years ago. They've had some weird situations. Bediako, staying in the draft, they had to go get Mohamed Wage in the middle of July. I think ideally you're not trying to build your roster in June or July. You're trying to have it set right now because this is when the guys are available. So if you do get Philon back, I have a hard time seeing them adding anybody else to that backcourt because you would have Philon, Wrightsville, Millette, Holloway, Bethea, and then your 2 freshmen in Hannah and Allen. That's more guys than you can play in the backcourt.
Well,
the front court,
am I the only one who kind of read the Bethea, however we decide to say it, commitment as maybe an indication that Philon's not coming back? Because how do you get a guy like that? He's going to expect to play.
I think where he fits is probably more replacing Youngblood in terms of he's probably more of a 2/3, whereas Philon's probably more of a 1/2. I think Philon, you have kind of step more into the Sears role, or you have Wrightsville step in and be your point guard. I don't know if that's a 1-for-1 Bethea and Philon.
I wasn't thinking purely in terms of position. I'm thinking more in terms of shot distribution. Because there's a lot of guards again.
Right, there is. And it's going to be tough to play all of them. I think right now the bigger question for me is the front court. I think you like Aiden Terrell. You're still projecting him into a bigger role. There's a certain amount of risk that comes with that. You're projecting Taylor Bowen into your offense, and he can shoot. But where I don't want to call him your Grant Nelson replacement. He is a similar size. Noah Williamson, I think, is a kind of lanky 7-footer. How does he project from the Patriot League to the SEC? You didn't get Corey Chest, who's going to Ole Miss. And then maybe Jaron Stevenson comes back. But there's questions with him, to say the least. So, and then you have London Jemison coming in as a freshman. You feel a little bit uneasy about the front court, I think, more than the back court. I think you'd feel really good about the back court if Philon comes back. Overall, it's a roster that I think is not going to be viewed to the same level as the roster was this past summer. Stacked, loaded, like whatever adjective you want to use. There's going to be more questions about this. That doesn't mean it's going to turn out better or worse. It's just entering the season, I think the expectations are going to be a little bit lower. We've seen that reflected. I posted the betting odds, this morning for the national championship. And Alabama's definitely lower than they were last offseason. So, there's more questions, but if you have one of those freshmen step in and have a great year, I think Bethea can step in, and if he hits his potential as a top 10 prospect, then you have something really nice on your hands with him. Are you a better rebounding team than you were last year? I don't know. Are you a better rim protecting, shot blocking team than you were last year? I don't know. Are you a better shooting team than you were last year? It's hard to lose Mark Sears and say yes, but Sears was streaky. You are adding Latrell Wrightso back. I think you're possibly a better shooting team than you were last year. Are you a better defensive team than you were last year? I don't know. We'll just have to see. But I think from what's been available in the portal for them, they've done a pretty good job. Kind of what is available resource-wise, too. I mean, you're still in a tougher spot, NIL-wise, I think, than some of the schools that are really adding guys, the Louisvilles of the world, for instance. But I don't know if this is a better team than last year. And it was going to be tough to have that be the case.
You can tell that there's a little bit more of an emphasis on adding some length just based on their portal ads, right? Like you got a 7-foot center, you've got a 6'11" forward and Taylor Bowen, Bethea. He's 6'5", right? Like most of Alabama's guards have not quite had height or length like that. So you can tell that that's just at least the early returns here from the portal. That seems to be an emphasis. And yeah, no, I think I agree that it's not going to be the loaded stacked roster that they had going into last offseason. It's going to be different. Expectations are going to be tempered. And I'm curious to see how they handle that. That seems, could that be a rallying cry for them that like, oh, people don't think we're good enough, right? Like I wonder how they're going to play that. I feel like Nate is going to play that card over and over and over again. So especially with like the national championship odds, the way too early national championship odds now out already. So yeah, I don't know that they're done, but at least the early returns that we've seen so far, they seem to have done well. They are trying to solve a few issues here and there. And there are still issues that they need to solve. Namely, is Philon coming back? Are they able to keep Darion Reed? I know that Modi is in the portal. Could they find a way to make him turn around and come back? I don't know. There's a lot of different things here that I think they still need to solve. And is what the portal's open for another couple weeks? The basketball portal? Do we know offhand?
26, I believe is the date.
Okay. So it's basically open through the rest of the month. So who enters what, because there's still a national championship game that needs to be played. So who enters? What does that mean? Is Alabama in play for some of those guys? So we've got a little bit of ways to go here before we know what the final off-season roster, I guess, looks like and what it'll mean for next season. Cool. We ran an hour. It was a little bit longer than I thought it was, but we had some good, vigorous discussion when it came to the football scrimmage. So that's all we've got today, guys. We'll be back later this week. We'll get to watch practice on Tuesday, or at least snippets of practice on Tuesday. So we'll report back what we find there and talk a little bit more about what to expect from the A-Day practice this Saturday. It's the final week of spring football, and then the portal will open up for football. So we'll probably continue to have Mike's favorite discussions when it comes to football transfer portal talk over the next couple of weeks. So, but yeah, we'll be back later this week. In the meantime, though, be sure to rate and review the show wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, even our Bama 247 YouTube page. Subscribe to Bama 247 and 24/7 Sports. You can get all of our great coverage of the Crimson Tide. The portal season is going to heat up this month, whether it's football or basketball, and we don't want you guys to miss a thing. So I put a link to subscribe in the show notes. As always, we appreciate you guys for listening. We will talk to you all again soon.